notice in a letter written to former President Trump. They added Trump will be moving to push the chairman of the North Carolina Republican Party into her position. However, a spokesman for the RNC dismissed these reports, saying the matter will be decided after the primary in the Palmetto State. The International Union of Police Associations says Donald Trump is the man to reverse Democrats' soft on crime policies. The union announced its endorsement Tuesday, touting Trump's support of law enforcement officers as unmatched. It adds Democrat policies that defund police departments, promote sanctuary jurisdictions, and reduce accountability for criminals have led to a massive spike in crime. The union goes on to say Trump is the best person to turn the disastrous policies around and make America even greater. The Supreme Court is set to hear oral arguments over challenges to Trump's eligibility to appear on Colorado's state ballot. One America's Daniel Baldwin has more.
Oral arguments regarding the Colorado case trying to disqualify President Trump from the ballots they're set for to be heard 10 a.m. Eastern Time this Thursday, February 8th. What can we expect come that day, oral arguments in front of the Supreme Court of the United States?
Sure. So what we have with this Colorado case, the Colorado case is one of a very large number of cases that have been filed by left-wing activists in an effort to keep President Trump off the ballot. For 6 independent reasons that we've raised in our briefs, the Colorado Supreme Court's decision striking President Trump from the ballot just doesn't hold legal weight. We believe we're going to be successful. We don't believe this is a particularly close case, and I think that's all going to come out in vivid detail in court on Thursday. But it's just important to remember what's going on here. Instead of trusting the American people to make their decision at the ballot box, instead of trusting the electoral system that we've had since the advent of the Republic, radical left-wing activists are seeking to make that decision for the American people, aided and abetted by people like the Colorado Supreme Court, or at least a bare majority of the Colorado Supreme Court. They are seeking to supplant their judgment for the judgment of the American people. At the end of the day, I have full confidence that President Trump is going to be on the ballot in all 50 states next November, and I believe that President Trump is going to win. It's just a shame that we have to go through this process that I believe makes a mockery of the Constitution in the meantime.
Well, it's interesting, real quick, we know you have to get going, but the Colorado State Supreme Court ruled that Section 3 of the 14th Amendment was self-executing, that it didn't need Congress. But Section 5 of the 14th Amendment literally reads that Congress shall have the power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article. Does this pour water on the whole self-executing argument right then and there?
Well, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, by its face, just on the basis of the constitutional text, doesn't apply to the President of the United States of America. That's clear as day. The self-execution arguments are very interesting when the only court, the only case that deals with this issue directly, it's In re Griffin's case, the court came down on the other side of that issue. But just up and down the line, for any number of reasons, the Colorado Supreme Court's decision won't hold water. And it's worth noting that this whole thing is based on this notion that President Trump engaged in insurrection. President Trump has never been indicted for insurrection. He's certainly never been convicted of insurrection. Nobody has been indicted or convicted of insurrection relating to the events of January 6th or any of the events that occurred after the 2020 election. So again, what we're dealing with here is an attempted end run around the political system by which we've chosen our president since the start of the Republic. And I have full confidence that the Supreme Court's going to do the right thing on Thursday.
Will Scharf, attorney for President Donald Trump, thank you so much for joining us in studio for One American News. We appreciate it.
Great to be with you as always. Thanks a lot.
The efforts to impeach DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas hit a snag. Earlier Tuesday, the House voted on a resolution to impeach the embattled secretary. The vote was at 215 to 215. Then a Republican voted with Democrats to reject the measure. A motion to reconsider the vote has been adopted by the House.
But it looks to me and to most of our members as if we have no real chance here to make a law.
Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell admits a controversial border and military aid bill is unlikely to pass. Speaking alongside colleagues at Capitol Hill Tuesday, McConnell congratulated Oklahoma Senator James Lankford for leading negotiations on the bill. but said pushback in both the House and Senate make it unlikely to make it onto the books. The bill has been backed by the Biden administration, but was decried by House Speaker Mike Johnson and many other conservatives as an incentive to further illegal immigration.
I think a Republican leader should actually lead this conference and should advance the priorities of Republicans.
Texas Senator Ted Cruz calls for a change in Senate GOP leadership following Minority Leader Mitch McConnell's unsuccessful push for the border bill negotiated with Democrats. Cruz condemned McConnell during a press briefing Tuesday, saying he believes it's time for the Kentucky senator to step down from his leadership post. He accused McConnell and other Senate leaders who supported the bill of being blinded by their desire for more Ukraine funding. Cruz also expressed outrage at the toll the border crisis is having on border states.
But if 110,000 illegal immigrants are destroying New York City, what the hell do you think 9.6 million are doing to Texas and the rest of the southern border? And so I'm angry. I'm angry that the Democrats want this human suffering to continue, and I'm angry at our own Republican leadership for going along with it in a terrible bill. Our line should have been secure the border and we're with you, and if you won't, the answer is no. It was obvious this bill would end in failure.
Cruz also pointed out Republicans failed to take back the Senate under McConnell in the 2022 midterms. Kansas Senator Roger Marshall says a new Senate border bill shows Democrats' goal of getting as many people across the border legally or illegally. One America's John Hines has more from Capitol Hill.
Senator Roger Marshall of Kansas, sir, I wanted to get your impression of this border agreement. It's been much talked about and it's been in the works for quite some time. How is it going over amongst your Republican colleagues in the Senate Republican Conference, sir?
Well, look, a lot of us think it was actually worse than we thought it was going to be. But what all Americans need to know and understand is that Joe Biden has the authority right now, the legal authority to close the border. I think all along I've had this goal. The number one goal for us is to secure the border. Obviously, based upon this legislation, their number one goal is to get as many people across the border as they can, legally or illegally. All along, I said they had to fix asylum and they had to fix parole, and they've done neither of those.
Do you have a prediction as to whether or not it will come up for a vote in the Senate? Rumor is maybe Wednesday. If it does come up for a vote, would it potentially have the votes to pass the Senate, sir?
Well, certainly what we've been told is we'll vote on cloture on Wednesday. I don't think that they have the votes right now, but it's anyone's guess where we'll be by Wednesday night. I think there's a lot of crying and gnashing of teeth going on right now. But again, Americans need to know that Joe Biden could secure the border right now if he wanted to.
So within the Republican conference, do you think that a significant portion, enough to get, I guess, the two-thirds majority would be added to the Democrats to support this, perhaps?
Look, I think if Republicans are going to support it, we need a large number of them to do that. And I don't think they're there yet. So I see no reason that we should go any further. I think that we should vote against cloture and move on to the next challenge. This bill does not secure the border.
I know I've heard from other members of the lawmakers that the issues they've heard about in some of these town halls that they've been going back to in their districts and their states are border, border, border. In Kansas, it's not directly a border state, but have you been hearing a lot about this, sir?
Oh, absolutely. Every state is now a border state. Like everybody, we're losing a young adult most every day to fentanyl poisoning. We're seeing child trafficking, we're seeing sex trafficking, we're seeing human trafficking just explode across the state right now. The cartel has stations set up across the entire state right now as well, so people no longer feel safe and secure. I think that's why this is the number one issue for across America, is the safety of your families and the border security issue.
Sir, there's a new poll out that rates Joe Biden the lowest approval rating on record since they've been doing this poll. Do you think that is merely coincidence with regard to this border issue? Do you think people are finally, maybe it's beginning to have an impact on their impressions of how the president is doing his job?
Well, I think that's a reflection of all the Biden's policies. The top three concerns I hear from Kansans is, number one, the open border. Number two is an attack on their constitutional rights. And number three is inflation, the economy. And Joe Biden has made every one of those worse today. I think that's why we're going to have a new president come November.
Senator Roger Marshall of Kansas, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Still to come on One America News, families in Mayfield, Kentucky are still rebuilding after a tornado in 2022. What organizations have come to their aid? Plus, a mother of the Oxford High School shooter is found guilty. How many years of prison time she faces for the 2021 shooting? Next. Welcome back. The illegal migrants suspected of brutally beating New York City police officers are now in custody after fleeing the state. ICE agents arrested the 4 suspects at a Greyhound bus station in Phoenix, Arizona on Tuesday. They've been identified as 19-year-old Darwin Gomez, 21-year-old Wilson Juarez, 24-year-old Yorman Rivera, and 19-year-old Servita Arocha. Surveillance footage captured the assault on 2 police officers in Times Square. You can see one getting kicked in the head multiple times. They were released without bail last week and fled New York. The Manhattan DA's office is expected to present charges against the group, while ICE processes them for immigration violations. The mother of the Oxford High School shooter, high school shooter in Michigan, is found guilty of involuntary manslaughter. One America's Rihanna Unatoa has more.
We find the defendant guilty of involuntary manslaughter.
A jury finds the mother of the Oxford High School shooter in Michigan guilty on 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter. On Tuesday, prosecutors argued 45-year-old Jennifer Crumbley, the mother of Ethan Crumbley, was partially responsible for the 2021 shooting, which left 4 dead and 7 wounded.
On count 2 of involuntary manslaughter in regards to Tate Muir, we find the defendant guilty of involuntary manslaughter. On count 3, as to involuntary manslaughter regarding Hannah St. Juliana, we find the defendant guilty of involuntary manslaughter.
Attorneys accused Jennifer of ignoring signs of her son's mental health struggles and storing the firearm used in the shooting in a negligent manner. Ethan Crumbley was 15 at the time of the shooting and pled guilty in 2022 to 4 counts of first-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Jennifer now faces up to 15 years in jail and will be sentenced on March 9th. Meantime, Ethan's father, James Crumbley, will be tried separately in March. Rihanna Unatoa, One America News.
Tenants of a collapsed Bronx building are now suing the landlord for allegedly not making the proper building repairs in a timely manner. One America's McKenna Blackman has the latest.
Tenants of an apartment building which collapsed in the Bronx are filing a lawsuit against their landlord and the city for not making the proper repairs after a section of the complex fell in early December, forcing many residents to vacate.
What we're filing today is not for any compensation for all that we have lost. It is strictly for the landlord to make the necessary repairs.
The tenants are suing with the help from the Legal Aid Society, which seeks to force the landlords to rebuild the collapsed portion, including restoring each of the unit's original layouts. Along with this, residents say many other aspects of the building have long-awaited repairs, such as an elevator which has not been functioning properly for many years, and addressing rat infestations.
There's work that needs to be done on the elevator, on the gas system, on the heating system, on the boiler for the hot water.
Eager to return home, residents are asking the court to intervene on their behalf and are hoping city officials act fast to address each of the building's hazards. According to City Council member Patriot Sanchez, she hopes to not only see officials act fast, but also to see the proper punishments leveled against those responsible for the neglect.
As a legislative body and looking at the oversight powers of the council and legislating the framework with which we enforce, we got to do more.
More than 100 residents lost many of their belongings and have had to live in places such as homeless shelters since the collapse in December. McKenna Blackman, One America News.
Families are still rebuilding years after a tornado ripped through Mayfield, Kentucky. One America's Jericho Dansell breaks down the recovery efforts.
Families in Kentucky are continuing to feel the effects of a tornado which hit the city of Mayfield. The aftermath of the 2022 natural disaster left many families displaced, with many of them failing to find new housing or in some cases being forced to move out of state due to increased rent prices. But there is a silver lining, as a nonprofit organization titled Camp Graves has been providing temporary housing to those affected by the tornado. Camp Graves was first established in the aftermath of the deadly twister and helps give families short to mid-term housing while also giving them access to resources such as legal aid and counseling. They also provide services to help residents get their GED or trade certifications and classes which cover subjects such as tax competency and budgeting.
I had some folks who are here at Camp Graves that are from initial displacement from the tornado. They were displaced. They either were staying with friends or family or hotels, so on and so forth. They were in the initial wave of displacement. And then we have folks that are in the second wave of displacement. It's the ripple effects of the tornado on our housing situation in the region.
But Camp Graves is not the only nonprofit helping displaced families find new housing. In 2023, the Kentucky government announced they will be partnering up with the HOPE initiative to help people affected by the tornado. The initiative helps build new housing for people whose homes were destroyed during the storm.
We've always had an urgency and a passion to help, and I think that's really one of the things that is very important, is whoever is going to be involved in the process of rebuilding, that they do have an urgency, an attitude of compassion for those that maybe were affected by this.
Meanwhile, residents in Camp Graves are voicing their gratitude for the people in charge of the organization for helping them get back on their feet.
This place means everything for me because, honestly, I don't know where we would be. We would probably be living somewhere scraping by, barely paying our rent. Or we would still be with my parents. Or we would be in government housing if we could get into a place, because they're all so overrun due to the lack of housing out here.
Meantime, Camp Graves said they will continue to operate well into the future and help with more temporary housing needs. For One American News, I'm Jericho Denzel.
Still to come on One American News, an explosion at a firework factory in India leaves more than a dozen dead and 150 injured. More on the rescue efforts. Plus, the president of Argentina demands a release of all the hostages who remain in Gaza, who he's expected to meet with. Straight ahead. A firework factory in central India explodes, leaving at least 11 people dead and more than 150 others injured. Officials confirmed the death toll earlier Tuesday after the factory in the Madhya Pradesh district went up in flames. Fire crews were seen working to douse the blaze, or to extinguish it rather, and search through debris to check if anyone was trapped. Reports say the injured victims were rushed to the hospital.
When the blast happened, my bike started trembling. The ground was shaking as if waves were traveling through it. I fell along with my bike. I left my bike and started running. While running, I fell a few more times, and rocks that flew from the ground hit me. Rocks were flying off the ground for a half a mile.
The cause of the explosion is still under investigation, although fatal accidents occur nearly every year in India's makeshift factories. The presidents of Israel and Argentina urged the need for the swift release of all hostages still in Hamas's hands. Earlier on Tuesday, Argentina's president, Javier Milei, announced he had sent a bill to the lower chamber of Argentina's House Congress, highlighting the 11 Argentine hostages that remain in Gaza, demanding their release. Israeli President Isaac Herzog confirmed 136 of the original 253 hostages remain in Gaza and stressed how important their return home is.
Now we have 136 hostages in Gaza, where we are praying and working tirelessly to bring them back home as soon as possible. And I know that you are supporting this plight, and I'm delivering the message through you to the entire world as well. We want them home as soon as possible. This cannot wait any longer. Their suffering is immense.
This as Milei is scheduled to talk with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu later this week. The U.S. military continues to send a message to the Iranian-backed proxies in the Middle East. One America's Monica Page has more.
Officials say the recent U.S. airstrikes we saw in the Middle East are only just the beginning of what's to come, following our response to the 3 service members who died in Jordan. Now, while this administration says it doesn't want conflict in the Middle East, is avoiding conflict a little too late? Joining me now is congressional candidate for Arizona's 8th District, Abe Hamadeh. Abe, thank you so much for joining us here. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan hinted that we will likely see more strikes in the coming days, both seen and unseen. Now, he also said he doesn't describe this as an open-ended military campaign. But would you say that we're already in an open-ended situation right now?
Unfortunately, the Biden administration's foreign policy has led us to this chaos and this disaster that we're seeing. You know, we haven't been aggressive enough. If you look back in October, after Hamas viciously killed and massacred over 1,300 Israelis in Israel, what was the United States' response? It was very, very weak. So it appears that Iran knows they are at war with the United States, but it's only because the Biden administration has allowed them to. There's no deterrence anymore, Monica. We seem to be advertising our military plans so they can move their weapons and their personnel so it doesn't cause as much damage to them. So I'm deeply concerned this administration does not know what it's doing. You know, who is really running the government, Monica? It's very scary. I think it's these deep state Obama holdovers that don't know what they're doing. And, you know, obviously Biden is not in control, but the rest of the world is going to take advantage of this and exploit our weaknesses right now.
It's absolutely concerning. And on the topic of Iran, I mean, Iran's been vocal about responding to our retaliation strikes. And, you know, while we haven't been fighting Iran directly, we've been fighting its proxies. But does this have the legs to become war with Iran directly?
Yeah, we have to be worried about that because it does seem like Iran is, you know, I don't think Iran wants a war on their soil, but Iran, what they're so effective at is these proxies. So, you know, the difference between this administration versus the last administration, the Iranians feared President Trump because they actually knew that there were consequences for actions. This administration seems to be rewarding Iran. When I was serving overseas, you know, with the U.S. Army, I was in Saudi Arabia under both President Trump and Biden. And I remember when Biden took office, he decided to delist the Houthis as a terrorist organization. But something that people may not know is Saudi Arabia was actively involved in a war against the Houthis at the time. So as much as this administration wants to try to, you know, they think they know what's going on and they want to avoid conflict, it seems like they're inviting more conflict. And that's what scares me because this can spiral out of control very quickly.
And Abe, on the topic of the Houthis, we're, you know, as we know, we're still launching these strikes in the Red Sea, attacking constantly these Houthis' anti-ship cruise missiles. I mean, what's it going to take to stop these groups if we're not going to stop the head of the snake, that is Iran?
Yeah, well, we shouldn't have had Iran have a foothold in Yemen. You know, the Houthis have been around since the 1990s. It seems like now suddenly everybody's talking about them, but they took over Yemen's government in 2014. They are basically the Taliban of Yemen. So, you know, what Biden should have been doing was actually getting a lot more aggressive with the Houthis and these Iranian proxies, because at that point, Iran would know to back off. And it just goes to show you how incompetent this administration really is. They think you could negotiate with these people. And you have to understand psychologically how to deal with them. President Trump understood.
Right. And you mentioned President Trump's playbook. I mean, what should Biden be taking out of his playbook in order to be effectively deterrent here?
Honestly, I don't think Biden can reestablish deterrence anymore. Once you lose strategic deterrence, it becomes very difficult to gain it back unless you do something really disproportionate where then they start to fear you again. But now what Biden has done is he's lost that deterrence. So I think the only way for the United States to regain that deterrence is by having President Trump back in the White House, because at that point, the rest of the world will be unnoticed.
Abe Hamadeh, congressional candidate for the 8th District of Arizona. Thank you so much for joining us here on One American News. We always love having you.
Thank you, Monica.
Still to come on One American News, House lawmakers host a hearing to discuss the protection of missing and exploited children, their advice to parents. Plus, a State Department officer is under arrest for his role in the January 6 events. We'll have the details right after this. I'm Stephanie Myers. Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley loses Nevada's GOP primary. Tuesday's result shows Haley came in second to the none of these candidates option in what many are describing as an embarrassing setback for her campaign. As of this morning, Haley received nearly 31% of the vote compared to none of these candidates with 63% support. 45th President Trump did not appear on the Nevada primary ballot, but will instead be an option for caucus goers when they participate in the process Thursday. However, Haley will not be an option. This is because in 2021, the state's Democratic legislature changed the law to hold primaries instead of caucuses, but Nevada's Republican Party decided to hold caucuses anyway to award delegates. Chris Christie suggests he's open to launching a third-party bid for the White House. In an interview with ABC Tuesday, Christie said he hasn't been contacted by the group No Labels, but signaled he would consider joining its ticket if the group reaches out. He contends a strong Republican on the group's tickets could hurt Donald Trump in the general election. No Labels is reported to be exploring a unity ticket that would include a Republican and a Democrat.
I'd have to see a path for anybody, not just me, but I think anybody who would accept that would need to see a path to 270 electoral votes. You know, if there was ever a time in our lifetime when a third-party candidate could make a difference, I think it's now. The question, though, is what kind of difference?
The former governor also addressed a hot mic moment in which he said Nikki Haley was going to get smoked by Trump. Christie called the incident a mistake but did not apologize. He also noted it doesn't look like Haley has a chance of winning her home state of South Carolina. After dedicating a committee to January 6, Congress provides few details. One America's Tom McGrath has more.
Representative Thomas Massie grills former January 6 committee chairman Benny Thompson on the pipe bomb that allegedly endangered Vice President Kamala Harris. During a House Rules Committee hearing, Massie inquired why more than 100 encrypted files related to the Capitol protest investigation were deleted before Republicans gained control of the House. Thompson alleged many files, including Secret Service text messages, were deleted while Donald Trump was still in office as part of the transition process. But Massie provided records that the deletion took place 24 days into Alejandro Mayorkas' tenure as DHS secretary, and that multiple committees had specifically asked for such records to be preserved.
I think if 4 committees of Congress gave a preservation notice and the Secret Service deleted those communications, that's obstruction of Congress. According to the Secret Service statement from 2022, it looks like they were still in the process of deleting these cell phone records when Mayorkas was secretary.
Vice President Harris has compared January 6th to 9/11 and Pearl Harbor. However, she has been oddly silent about the most lethal weapon within striking distance of an elected official on that day, a pipe bomb that supposedly threatened her safety. Thompson failed to recall any relevant information regarding the alleged incident that Massie said would have been the worst U.S. political assassination since JFK.
We're not a criminal investigation. We are, we were an oversight body looking at the facts and circumstances. We were not a criminal body to see who laid the bomb or anything like that.
According to Massie, footage revealed it took Secret Service 10 minutes to respond to the bomb. That was 15 feet from the DNC building Harris was residing in. Massie lamented that Congress is unable to conclude why the Secret Service responded this way due to the missing communications, which both Thompson and Representative Liz Cheney have referred to as a possible violation of the Federal Records Act. The Kentucky Republican stated that if it were up to him, Secretary Mayorkas would be impeached for obstruction of Congress. Details surrounding the 2 January 6 pipe bombs have been scarce, as FBI Director Christopher Wray has dodged Massie's inquiries into the subject. Tom McGrath, One America News.
Representative Matt Gaetz introduces a sense of Congress resolution declaring Trump did not engage in an insurrection. Here's One America's Chloe Hawkswell.
63 House Republicans are supporting a resolution declaring President Trump did not engage in an insurrection. Representative Matt Gaetz brought the measure to the House floor Tuesday, saying Congress has a unique role in making this declaration.
The very experts who often get on television and talk about securing democracy seem to be the first to want to then remove a candidate from the ballot because they are afraid that he is too popular.
The GOP conference chair, Elise Stefanik, co-sponsored the bill, saying the American people are smart and they know the truth.
As President Donald Trump continues to dominate in the polls, extreme Democrats will stop at nothing in an attempt to prevent President Donald Trump from returning to the White House, and the Democrats are shredding the Constitution in the process.
Many of the members who spoke Tuesday said the comments Trump made on January 6, 2021, showed he was encouraging his supporters to peacefully protest.
It's a sad day when free speech is weaponized, especially against a political opponent. It's hard to engage in an insurrection when you weren't even there. President Trump told protesters to protest peacefully. He said, please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful. Now, dadgummit, I don't know what he can say more than that. Does this sound like someone engaging in insurrection? Hell no.
And Representative Andy Biggs pointed out the hesitation by the leading law enforcement in the nation to call the events of that day an insurrection.
The Democrats, they insisted that it was an insurrection, but the exchange between Eric Swalwell trying to get this director to say that it was an insurrection at the hearing in June of 2021, where Director A said, well, Congressman, I understand why you describe it that way, but as FBI director, that term has legal meaning. It was not an insurrection.
Not one person has been charged for insurrection, and Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene asserts the push to demonize those at the Capitol that day is a political ploy.
Democrats and dishonest people in the media every single day accuse President Trump of waging an insurrection and accuse many of us of waging an insurrection, and you're doing nothing but lying and selling the lies of the Democrats, all for campaigns and elections.
Republicans say the continued attacks on Trump is an effort to remove the leading political opponent to the Democrat Party.
You know how I know it wasn't an insurrection? Because he hasn't been charged with insurrection. And we can all see by the lawfare how he's facing up over 700 years in jail right now, how they've tried to destroy this man, destroy his businesses, that if they felt they had an inkling of a chance of convicting President Trump of jaywalking or insurrection, they would absolutely charge him.
Senator J.D. Vance brought a companion bill to the Senate. If the measure is approved in the House, any member who continues to perpetuate the narrative will be in violation of House privileges.
Those sociopaths that continue to push this lie, once we have this on the floor, if you continue to push this, you guys are all going to be guilty of breaching House privileges, okay? Because we're saying that it didn't happen. We have evidence to back it up. So just think on that for a little bit.
Republicans expect more members of the conference to show their support for the bill.
The radical left is attempting to destroy our electoral process. And folks, we cannot let them succeed for the benefit of our great republic.
Chloe Hawkswell, One America News.
House Speaker Mike Johnson says the Senate border bill is in jeopardy and may be on life support. One America's Sonia Natoa has more from House GOP leaders.
I declared it dead on arrival, and it looks like right now it may be in some jeopardy. It may be on life support in the Senate.
House Speaker Mike Johnson doubling down on his criticism of the Senate border bill. At a press conference with House GOP leaders Tuesday, he said the bill is riddled with loopholes, exploits any measure to keep the border open, and does not secure the border.
That this is a fundamental responsibility of the federal government to secure the border. If you don't have a secure border, you don't have safety, you don't have security, and you don't have sovereignty. And Republicans simply cannot vote for the bill in good conscience.
This as House Republicans continue efforts to impeach DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas.
His malfeasance and active neglect has fueled the worst border crisis in our history and left innocent Americans to pay the price.
Conference Chair Elise Stefanik said H.R. 2, which House Republicans already passed, would be more effective in securing the border.
Joe Biden's weakness and open border policies have left our borders wide open. Millions of illegal immigrants have invaded our country due to Joe Biden's open border executive actions.
And Johnson said he's been urging the White House to consider the provisions of H.R. 2 ever since he obtained the gavel.
Our Secure the Border Act has the necessary components to solve the problem. We restore remain in Mexico, we end catch and release, we reform the asylum broken system, the broken parole process and policy this administration has been pursuing, and we built wall.
The speaker said Biden has the authority to stop the border crisis now, but he refuses to do so. Johnson continued, saying he took a group of Republicans to the border and saw the humanitarian catastrophe firsthand, adding it cannot continue.
The nation is struggling with all the terrible societal ills that have come with this open border. It is unacceptable. We cannot allow this to continue anymore.
Sonny Unutoa, One America News.
House Republicans hold a hearing regarding government censorship. Here's more.
Not that long ago, Democrats directly and forcefully criticized the Department of Homeland Security as an agency that run amok, that could interfere in our elections to help Republicans. This is an agency that's grown by billions of dollars since 9/11, that was originally set up to fight Islamic radicalization to prevent another terrorist attack, that now polices tweets, that now polices comments on Facebook and Instagram, that now, in a biased way, censors regular American legitimate speech on political issues.
Free speech advocates take their fight against government censorship to Congress. On Tuesday, the House Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government held a hearing on how the government censors Americans with the help of artificial intelligence. It started off with Epstein-connected delegate Stacey Plaskett lamenting the GOP-led body keeps holding hearings on this issue. Plaskett's preferred topics are how the IRS is racist and how to derail the popular President Trump's re-election campaign. She also spewed a debunked conspiracy theory that Trump wants to weaponize the government to take out political opponents.
Where are the hearings about a former president who believes he can use the federal government to kill his political opponents?
The delegate was supported by the DNC and intelligence community's rising cheerleader, New York Representative Dan Goldman. He used his time not to grill witnesses on their claims of censorship, but to cry that the real weapons of the federal government are Trump and House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan. The Levi Strauss heir echoed the Democrat talking point that government censorship is not real, adding so-called censors are navigating an ambiguous First Amendment that can be manipulated by foreign governments.
This is a very difficult issue. The balance between the First Amendment and what is free speech and what is...
Respectively,
Hold on,
Congressman, you don't seem to be taking it seriously at all.
Sir, I didn't ask a question.
You said this was a useless hearing.
I didn't ask you a question, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to reclaim my time.
The gentleman has the time.
That the problem that we are facing in the post-2016 world, where social media is used as a weapon to interfere in elections from foreign governments, is that this is a difficult thing to navigate.
Florida Representative Kat Cammack pulled out evidence that the federal government is in fact pressuring social media outlets to censor content.
He just stated that there has never been an occasion in which the White House, the Biden White House, has threatened or pressured social media companies to take down social media posts. But I have timestamps, I have emails, we come with receipts. I mean, February 6, 2021, 9:45 p.m., Rob Flattery, White House official demanding Twitter take down a parody of Finnegan Biden, Hunter Biden's adult daughter.
Not all the witnesses were journalists and free speech defenders. The Democrats also got their own witness. Enter Norm Eisen, who has been linked to a pre-2020 exercise where Democrats plotted ways to block President Trump from retaking office. Additionally, he used money from George Soros to start an advocacy group that helped Maine's Secretary of State try to remove Trump from the primary ballot. At the hearing, Eisen defended an MIT program funded by the federal government that targeted rural regions of America with AI tools that have a high concentration of Christians and veterans. The program's researchers believed these Americans were susceptible to so-called misinformation. However, Florida Representative Matt Gaetz points out the Minority Report type effort has ulterior aims.
May I
because you've
answer?
got the government funding these predictive analytics to go after Americans. And here's what I think is actually true. It's not that military families and rural Americans and people who love the Bible and Constitution are dumber or uniquely susceptible to anything. It's just they don't think like how the expert class and the National Science Foundation wants them to think, and so they're trying to program what they see so they can control what they behave, and that is the true weaponization this committee will stand against.
Chairman Jordan stresses these hearings are an opportunity to hear from left-leaning journalists who are calling out the censorship efforts of the current Democrat administration, and he vows to keep holding the White House's feet to the fire.
House lawmakers conduct a hearing on protecting missing and exploited children. One America's Rihanna Unatoa has the details.
A House subcommittee hears testimony from the president of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. On Tuesday, the subcommittee on early childhood, elementary, and secondary education hosted Michelle DeLon, who detailed the nonprofit's efforts to remove pictures on the internet exploiting children.
So we created Take It Down. We created Take It Down as an empowerment tool for kids, that if they are in an image that they believe is being shared or could be shared, they can come to our website. It's a very simple process, 3 questions. There's no personally identifying information included. Are you under the age of 18? Were you depicted in imagery of sexually explicit content? Do you think that the images might be out there?
The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, also known as NCMEC, is a nonprofit organization that provides resources to families, victims, law enforcement, and the public on issues related to missing and exploited children. According to DeLon, NCMEC has partnered with 10 different tech companies who will assist the organization in removing the photos online. The president of the organization detailed her work with law enforcement agencies.
When there's a critical missing child case, we have a cadre of retired law enforcement with specialized subject matter expertise that we can deploy to work amongst law enforcement on the ground with these critical cases to bring all of our resources actually into the community.
Experts have raised the alarm about artificial intelligence, which can use pictures of children to generate sex abuse material. NCMEC said it had received 4,700 reports last year regarding content generated by AI technology that depicted child sexual exploitation.
Law enforcement is going to be struggling with the AI images. Is this a real child? Is this not a real child? And when you're doing victim identification work, is this a child in your community? Is this a completely fabricated, generated child? And so that is going to be a challenge for law enforcement there.
DeLon has encouraged parents to have open conversations with their children about the dangers on the internet and social media apps, and to report any inappropriate pictures online that may exploit children. For more information on NCMEC's work and resources, their website is missingkids.org. Rihanna Unatoa, One America News.
Still to come on One America News, Meta's Oversight Board said they have to place labels on images and videos generated by AI. How the company responded. Plus, multiple dairy products are recalled across 11 states. We'll tell you why after this. Welcome back. Honda issues a recall for over 750,000 vehicles. In a statement Tuesday, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration said the weight sensor for the front passenger seat is susceptible to cracking and short-circuiting, which could cause airbags to go off unintentionally. They added this issue was found in models made between 2020 and 2022. Honda released a statement saying no injuries have been reported, but they have received nearly 4,000 warranty claims. Meantime, the NHTSA said dealers will fix the issue at no cost. Riza Lopez Foods recalls a large number of their dairy products. On Tuesday, the company said their products could be potentially contaminated with listeria. These products include sour cream, cheese, and yogurt produced by Tio Francisco, Don Francisco, Rio Grande, and others. Meantime, the CDC and FDA released a statement saying the contamination has resulted in 23 hospitalizations, 26 illnesses, and 2 deaths across 11 states. The FIFA World Cup is coming to North America. Here's more.
New Jersey's MetLife Stadium is set to host the final of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. The East Rutherford venue was named as the host of the championship match by tournament organizers Sunday, while Mexico City's Estadio Azteca will host the opening match on June 11, 2026. The U.S., Mexico, and Canada are co-hosting the tournament, which will feature 48 teams and a total of 104 games for the first time in its history.
This final in 2026 on the 19th of July 2026 will be epic. It will be fabulous. It will be the final of the first ever FIFA World Cup with 48 teams, 48 countries. We'll have millions of people coming to the United States for the whole World Cup, to Mexico and to Canada as well.
New York City Mayor Eric Adams praised the decision on Monday, highlighting the economic benefits the prestigious tournament will bring to the area.
This is just huge for us. $2 billion predicted in economic revenue. We're looking at 14,000 jobs, over 1 million tourists. And the beauty of that, not every tourist or visitor goes to the game. Something that many people don't realize when you talk about the World Cup, it is the fan experience.
Team USA will play 2 of its group stage matches at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles and 1 at Lumen Field in Seattle.
When you think about LA, an iconic soccer city, already hosted 3 World Cup finals, with the Men's World Cup in 1994, then the Women's in 99, and the Women's again in 2003. Hosted the USA-Colombia game in the 1994 World Cup, which we got the win. And then you think about the rich tradition of Southern California producing tons of players for our program. Then you have LA Galaxy, LAFC, SoFi Stadium, a lot going on with LA.
AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas, and Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta were selected to host the semifinals. A total of 11 U.S. cities will host 78 games, with AT&T Stadium, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and SoFi Stadium each hosting at least 8 games. The rest of the matches will be split between Guadalajara, Monterrey, and Mexico City down south, and Toronto and Vancouver up north.
Facebook parent company Meta will now be required to place labels on AI-generated images and videos of politicians. In a ruling this week, the company's oversight board said this content can remain on Facebook and Instagram as long as they're labeled as being generated by artificial intelligence. This comes as AI deepfakes of figures such as Donald Trump and President Biden began circulating online. Meantime, Meta said they will be reviewing the board's guidance. Major Hollywood studios are shifting strategies and even downsizing as shows and movies see declining returns. Emma Gillet has more.
Is Hollywood shrinking? After 2 bruising strikes, that's been the question on everyone's minds as stars make their way back to the red carpet. From fewer original series and movies,
I'm gonna find you and take what little you have,
to more scrutiny on production budgets.
I seek outings and adventures.
Entertainment executives, agents, and bankers Reuters spoke to all say the era of peak TV is over.
I want the opposition. Cut their throats.
One of them even called it the Great Contraction. So what does that mean for Hollywood? There are signs of the contraction everywhere. It'll be prominent when Walt Disney, Warner Bros. Discovery, and Fox report quarterly results this month. Analysts estimate broadcast and cable TV ads will be down 7% from last year. Next year doesn't look much better, with ad revenue forecasted to fall another 7%. The contraction is also the backdrop for media merger chatter, most recently between Paramount and Skydance Media CEO David Ellison, whose studio produced Top Gun: Maverick. Streaming services were supposed to carry the industry into the future, but are struggling to reach profitability after years of profligate spending. Most streaming services are charging more while delivering less new content. The overall number of scripted series is expected to shrink dramatically from the pinnacle of 633 shows released in 2022.
I don't know what the future holds, so...
Executives say the industry is slowing down. It's taking longer to greenlight shows.
Fate is not decided up there, but down here.
And shows that fail to grab an audience are being canceled quicker, and seasons are featuring fewer episodes. One senior television agent calls it the New World Order. The movie business is having its own existential crisis, as once reliable formats have fallen flat at the box office. Big-budget superhero movies have been falling short of expectations. So insiders say studios are shifting gears and focusing instead on fewer but more ambitious endeavors, hoping to deliver Oppenheimer and Barbie-sized cultural and box office impact.
I find the world a bitter and complicated place.
According to analyst T.D. Cohen, people are streaming everything except the biggest, loudest films, so the outlook for a sustained recovery is questionable. That will further constrain cinemas, as insiders warn there may be too few films released to justify the 39,000 screens in the U.S. U.S. box office sales are expected to be $8 billion in 2024, down a third from 2019.
Big corporations are pumping millions of dollars into their advertising campaigns ahead of Super Bowl 58. Reports say the average cost of 30-second ads is $7 million. This year could be especially important for advertising, as female viewership is expected to be huge, citing the boost this season from Taylor Swift's relationship with Travis Kelce.
I think $7 million is actually quite good value for money, and everyone thinks I'm completely insane when I say that. But what other event in the world have you got where everybody is watching the same thing at the same time and everyone's talking about the adverts? I mean, most people pay money to avoid the adverts.
Last year's Super Bowl brought in a record number of viewers, with more than 115 million people watching the game. And I have a feeling that will be even more so this year. We'll have to wait and see. Well, that will round up this hour here on One.
I eat no for breakfast.
This is Pat Gray Unleashed.
Well, hi there. Happy Wednesday. I'm Hillary. This is your 4-Minute Buzz, and here are some of today's top stories. Earlier this week, Tucker Carlson was spotted in Moscow, leading some to wonder whether he was interviewing Vladimir Putin. Well, yesterday, Carlson posted a video on X confirming this to be true and explained why he chose to interview the Russian president.
American media outlets have spoken to scores of people from Ukraine, and they've done scores of interviews with Ukrainian President Zelensky. We ourselves have put in a request for an interview with Zelensky, and we hope he accepts. But the interviews he's already done in the United States are not traditional interviews. They are fawning pep sessions specifically designed to amplify Zelensky's demand that the U.S. enter more deeply into a war in Eastern Europe and pay for it. That is not journalism. It is government propaganda. Propaganda of the ugliest kind, the kind that kills people. At the same time, our politicians and media outlets have been doing this, promoting a foreign leader like he's a new consumer brand. Not a single Western journalist has bothered to interview the president of the other country involved in this conflict, Vladimir Putin. Most Americans have no idea why Putin invaded Ukraine or what his goals are now. They've never heard his voice. That's wrong. Americans have a right to know all they can about a war they're implicated in, and we have the right to tell them about it because we are Americans too. We are not encouraging you to agree with what Putin may say in this interview, but we are urging you to watch it. You should know as much as you can. And then, like a free citizen and not a slave, you can decide for yourself.
Well, he also claimed the Biden administration previously spied on his text messages to prevent him from interviewing Putin. And in a separate video, Carlson was caught having some fun with a Russian journalist. Take a listen.
Can I ask you about your interview with Putin?
With who?
With Putin. Who is it?
I've heard the name, but
With our President Putin.
Yeah, it sounds familiar, but I can't say anything.
Tucker's interview with Putin will be free and publicly available on his website. And in some other news, Gina Carano has launched a lawsuit against Disney over her termination from The Mandalorian. Carano was fired back in 2021 over a controversial social media post in which she wrote, quote, "Most people today don't realize that to get to the point where Nazi soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them simply for being Jews. How is that any different from hating someone for their political views?" Carano's lawyer was hired by X since Elon Musk promised to legally assist people fired for posting on the social media platform. And in some other news, there's an update on an ongoing pro-life case in Washington, D.C. In March of 2022, 2 pro-life activists discovered the bodies of 5 preemie-sized aborted babies in a box outside of an abortion facility. They saw this as potential evidence of illegal post-birth or partial birth abortions occurring at the facility. Well, the Department of Justice reportedly advised the Washington, D.C. medical examiner to discard the remains of the babies. Lauren Handy, one of the pro-life activists who discovered the babies, has since been charged under the FACE Act for a separate instance. Her lawyer told the Daily Signal, quote, "Beyond Lauren's case, there is a general need to have these babies examined. There is literally exactly a 50% chance that 2 of these babies were born alive and left to die. There's some chance that the others were subject to illegal partial birth abortions. The DOJ knows this. Those are federal crimes." The police previously stated the babies appeared to have been aborted legally, but have not said whether autopsies were performed. I'm Hillary. That's your 4-Minute Buzz. Now here's Glenn and Stu.
Thank you very much, Hillary. We've got a lot to talk about, the win and the loss of the GOP yesterday. If the economy goes up in flames, and we're wobbling on the edge of the cliff right now, I've got an amazing story about the $340 trillion of debt from the West that we're going to have to pay for at some point. The top of the line emergency, go-to company, because it's not just food storage; it's everything that you might need if there's an emergency. They've helped millions of people prepare over the years, and the name of the company is My Patriot Supply. Right now, you can get their 1-year emergency food kit at My Patriot Supply. You'll save $700, but it ends this week. So, 25 years in storage, 2,000 calories a day, cost you under $2,000. It's an amazing deal. Entire meal system, breakfast, lunch, dinner, everything from MyPatriotSupply.com. Free shipping included, MyPatriotSupply.com.